Hey guys, so we're back again today and we got the 6LP that we were doing the cooling system overhaul on, which we're still working on. This is day 2. If you haven't seen day 1, I will link a video up in the corner. What we got kind of going on, the oil cooler's removed, the heat exchangers removed, pretty much charge air cooler's removed. The turbo is shot on this thing, so we got to put a new turbo on it. Now, the turbo is shot not in the case of the entire turbo's trash. The problem is actually the sealing surface here on the turbo outlet. You can see all the black soot around the edge, so we've got a new one to put on today. The new one's getting freshly painted as we speak, so once it's done kind of drying out and being done with that, we will go on that part of it. But we will also be changing out all the hoses and everything. So we're going to start with replacing a thermostat on a 6LP. So this one, you can see kind of here, this is the thermostat, and this is the thermostat gasket. Now, if you're doing this without doing the whole cooling system overhaul, it's a pretty easy procedure. What will go on here is we'll show you where it's located. So here on the starboard side of the engine, we have this water passage right here that you can see. And there's this housing. So get this old broken hose clamp out of the way. So we've got this hose right here, as well as our thermostat housing. And then we've got another bolt right here that is a ground bolt for some parts of our harness, as well as the other bolt for the thermostat. So we'll take those two bolts out and we'll get the housing out, which I believe they're 12mm bolts, and then we'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so now we got our cover off. It was two 12mm bolts. And this might dump some coolant when you remove it, so I have a bag under here. And once you kind of pop it up and out, I'm gonna use a screwdriver and get it right out. And there's our old thermostat. So once we got our old thermostat out, we'll take a look at all our sealing surfaces and make sure it's all nice and clean. Clean it down with acetone and put our new one in. So I'll check back with you when we've got our surfaces all cleaned up and repainted. Okay, so now that we got kind of our pieces all together, re-cleaned and prepped this so the surface is nice and clean, freshly painted, so it looks really good. So here's our gasket for our thermostat. It's an O-ring style gasket. And we've got our thermostat here, brand new. I always like to check it against the old, which it looks pretty much identical. 70 Celsius, so it's still rated the same. And this gasket actually fits, the thermostat fits inside it. So what I'll do is push the gasket in, have it where it's covered all the way around. And this actually has an orientation up and down. So this orientation is where the bleeder valve is all the way on top. If the bleeder valve is all the way on the bottom, air gets trapped on this thermostat, causes the engine to overheat. So let's go down there and take a look at our surface. Okay, so on the engine here, we've got our thermostat surface. Here we've got our thermostat, our little dribble valve. It's going to be straight up and down as much as possible. Okay, once you got the thermostat in, you put your housing on. The housing has no direction, it can go either way. And then you tighten it down. Make sure to put the grounds that were right here back on. There's two of them. So while we're waiting for the thermostat housing to dry and get clean, we'll start taking the turbo off. So first things first, we got to kind of take our PCV system off. So we got to take these two bolts these two bolts. Then kind of work our way from there. We also got a bunch of bolts that the turbo goes to, so. And then we've also got a clamp. This doesn't stay with, this little pipe right here doesn't stay with the old turbo, it goes on the new one. We've also got an oil drain down here, which is two 14mm bolts. And then we've got a banjo fitting up on top, which is our oil feed line. So we'll kind of get that taken care of. Now there are some things like these have two zip ties here, just because that's how this boat was specifically done. You won't usually have that. So let me get right to it. Okay, so working on this, we got almost everything off. We've got the bolts out of the drain, we got the bolt out of the top, we've got the PCV system undone, we've got the coolant on the top undone, we've got our coolant bleed taken off, and we've got 3 of the 4 nuts loose. Now the 4th one is actually a stud underneath the turbo. I don't know how well you can see it, but you need a 17mm, and I would use an actual wrench, because you can't get a socket on it, and the ratcheting wrenches that I have don't fit, so you need a regular box end wrench. So once I get that off, we will continue. Okay, so I got the 4th one off. I'll show you guys what I was able to do here in a bit. The lower coolant is not cooperating with me. I gotta see if I can kind of give it a little bit of persuasion. Okay, persuasion accomplished. And I can see that there's going to be liquid in it. So I'm going to get a bag underneath it for the impending coolant. Which actually wasn't that bad. It was just like a few drips. Okay. So this turbo should just kind of come right out. Okay, looks like it was going to start leaking anyway if it wasn't from the turbo right there, somewhere else. And as far as I'm concerned, that's awesome. Awesome that we were able to get that out. The back of the engine doesn't look too good, but I'll get a vacuum in here and vacuum all this out and kind of clean, prep, and repaint a lot of it so it looks way better than it currently does. And then we'll have to get a new coolant pipe. If you can't tell from here, this coolant pipe looks like it'll rust through any second. And then we've also got one nut. So we've got all our nuts for the turbocharger, and we're good to go. We'll clean this up and try to make it look a little more presentable. So one thing to note about these turbos is that the new ones don't come with the fittings for the coolant. So you'll have to take them out of the top and bottom of the turbo, which one is right here and the other is right here. So I'll clean them up and make them look nice to go in the new turbo. They're brass, so they're not gonna be all corroded and nasty. They just, you know, they don't come with the new one, so you'll have to take them out. So one other thing I forgot to mention is the stud sticking out of the current turbo. So you are going to need to get that stud out, and the way I do that is via the double nut method. So I put one nut on, and I put it on until I know I have enough room for a second nut. Then I'm going to put the second nut on. Once I have that nut on to where all the threads are grabbing, I'm going to jam the first nut against it. So we're going to tighten this one this way and the other one the opposite way. Now that we tighten the crap out of it, I get on the second nut and it loosens the stud right out. The same method to put in. There's only one hole on this turbo where you can put a stud in, so it's not like you're gonna put it in the wrong place. And I go in, I tighten it down, and then I do the same way of getting this thing out. Loosen the two nuts against each other. Once you've loosened it, there you go. Your stud is now installed on your new turbo.